I saw the message after I talked. Okay. Hello. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first masterclass of the week. Part of what we do here at Flagstaff Piano Festival is to inspire and showcase young talent, and we are thrilled to have some beautiful young pianists here this week performing and taking lessons and involved in seminars and in everything that we do. And these morning classes are meant for the larger audience and community to join us and to kind of, as I said yesterday, to learn how the sausage gets made in this context where they perform and then they receive some instruction from our guest artists and from me today, and then we will have a Q&A towards the end of the class. So we have 30 minutes with each student and then a Q&A with the artist at the end. Today we have 3 performers. You know who you are, and we'll go in order at 10, 10:30, and 11. Yep. Everybody has the program. Students especially, please make sure you take notes that you can take into your and use in your practice room following the classes that you observe this week. And with that being said, welcome again, and let's get started with Alex. Good job, Alex. And thanks for playing for us. Is the microphone working? No. Can we have the microphone work, please? Thank you. Okay, now it should work. Yeah? Okay. Great job. How old are you? Remind me. 15. This is such a great sonata. It's one of my favorite from Mozart. And I think you're doing a very good job overall. I have some feedback related to some rhythms and just the sound production in the right hand especially. But before we talk about that, those very specific things, I want to talk to you about the character. Of course, we all heard about Mozart, right? I want to pose a question for everybody in the audience, but I expect you to answer, perhaps, if you know the answer. What was Mozart's favorite form to compose, favorite style? Because he wrote everything from, keyboard sonatas to chamber music, symphonies, quartets, everything that you can imagine. But there was something that he loved above everything else, to write and to be in the theater to observe. Do you know what? Opera, yeah. It was the opera. And because of that, if you are influenced by something specific, right? Let's say you love American football, but you mostly play baseball, right? You throw the ball differently. So the way you play baseball might be influenced by what you learned from football, right? It's the same here. So the fact that he loved the opera so much meant that everything else that he wrote, he was influenced by that. And that's how I would invite you to look at this. I don't know if you've done this before. But every keyboard sonata by Mozart can be looked at in that way, like a mini opera or a part of an opera, where we have different characters interspersed with orchestral interludes and with a lot of drama. I think that's the main word that I want to invite you to imagine, a lot of drama. So that this is very different from this, right? Which will be very different from that, right? And we want to convey that very clearly for the audience to get it, okay? So, have you thought about it this way before? Okay. By the way, you are doing something very interesting. I'm not 100% sure I agree, but it's very interesting. The second time this happens, you start very softly. But Mozart didn't write it like that. So I agree with the fact that it should be a crescendo, but I'm not sure that it should be soft. So let's do an experiment. Can you start from the beginning, and let's say this is, imagine a character. If this was a character in an opera or in a movie, what would it be? What do you think? Or who would it be?
Like a woman, maybe?
I mean, that's very vague. Can you be more specific?
Maybe like a woman who's going out in the park and enjoying nature or something like that.
Could it also be a man?
Mm-hmm.
Could be. Okay, so how do you play that then? Okay, we'll talk about voicing and other things later, but that's kind of, I want to see how you conceive that, and then, why don't you play this? What's that? That's like a storm coming, right? So it needs to have a lot of energy. Okay? Then what happens?
Like the storm passes and it's sunny again.
It's sunny again, yeah. Maybe we wake up in the morning and the storm is gone, right? Okay, now since we got here, well, actually, let me finish with this kind of thing. Do you see how these are all different? We want to convey that very clearly. When we play, look up there, do you see our friends there in the last row? They need to hear you, number one. Number two, they also need to understand every single form of expression, of musical expression that you want to convey. I will take a wild guess, I don't know you very well yet, but I'll take a wild guess that you are not the most extrovert person in the world. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. He says quietly, yeah. But you see, when we play on stage, that doesn't really matter. Who we are in our private life doesn't really matter. When we go on stage, we need to be able to express music, theater, whatever it is that we do on stage, to its fullest extent of expression and expressive elements. That's why we need to exaggerate everything. Okay? So, when you start, for instance, first of all, I would not start with the pinky. I noticed that you do. Because the pinky is a weak finger, and all you have to play there is 2 notes. So there is no good reason, in my opinion, to start on 5 and use 5-3. You can use 3-1, you can do 4-2. That's my favorite finger. Can you try that? Good. Now, which hand is the main voice? The right hand. What's the dynamic level written in the score?
Mezzo forte.
Piano. It's piano. That's why you try to play so softly. But I want to remind all the students in the room that when we see a dynamic level in the score, that should be the average of wherever the tune is, the melody, which should be above that, and the accompaniment under that. So that by the time we play that more, this less, the average will be a piano sound, right? That means that the right hand perhaps should be mezzo piano, and the left hand should be pianissimo. Can you try this? Just the left hand. Perfect. Now, so your touch naturally, it seems to me, is a little bit from a suspended arm like that. And as a result, that left hand, you find it easy to play. But the right hand, which needs a little more sound, doesn't sound quite enough. Do you mind if I show you on your arm? So you play kind of like this, right? And I'm playing like this. Resist me. Yeah, resist. There you go. You should leave bruises on the keys. Can you try just the right hand? Place your left hand like this and drop the entire weight of your left arm on your right wrist, and then resist it with the right hand and play like that. Even more. Imagine that you're pressing the key all the way to your knees. More? Yes. Good. Now can you play that without the left hand involved? Good. Now do you remember how you played the left hand? Do 1 bar of the left hand alone and then bring in the right hand. Very nice. Now start from the beginning the way it's written. Good. Do we hear his right hand better this time? Yeah, okay. Do you hear the difference? So now you might think, yeah, but my right hand is kind of mezzo forte or something like that. It's not piano what's written in the score. But does it sound too loud to anybody? I don't think so. Everybody says no. Because, again, you have this large space that you need to fill. And I don't know if you've played with singers yet, but you've done that? So if this was a singer, then you are the piano, right? You play this. And the singer will go, ti ta 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 ta, right? They are not going to go ta 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 ta. What singer is going to sing like that? Nobody, right? So now I'm going to take this even further for expression. In my opinion, this is one character. It's kind of like a duet, and then this is a different one, and then the next one, right? So we have. And then we have, by the way, for fingering, I would suggest 3-2 for that. G, F sharp. And that's a two-note slur, which is so common and widely used in the classical era music, right? A two-note slur. It's it's a very specific expressive element in articulation that we need to convey properly. And there is a very simple way to do it physically, which is we lean into the first note and our wrist drops with our arm weight in it. So that's going to be louder and longer. And then as we go up, the other finger is just there. You don't articulate it, but it's just there and it's shorter and lighter. Can you do that? So deep, I call this dip and float. So dip and float. Can you play even less on the F sharp? So that means more on the G. Thank you. And then, good. And now, good. Now with the left hand. Yeah, keep going. That's great. Storm. Great job on the finger work there, by the way. I would, you know, these last those, although they are quarters, because they are at the end of the motif and because they are followed by a rest, again, in classical music, we are going to play them a little shorter. They're not going to be held for the full length. I know you're doing that because you're being a good student, but I'll give you two options to choose from, okay? Versus. Which one did you like? Can you try that? That's it. Beautiful. Great job. Okay. Now we have a completely different character. Yeah? The way I see it, the opening is more like someone is trying to figure something out. Imagine that you are in a new building. Was Saturday your first time in this building? If you didn't have our wonderful counselors to guide you around, would you find your way? Because I didn't for half a year after I moved here. So imagine that you are in this gray maze that's around here, and you have to find a room. And then you go, oh, is it this one? No, it's not. Is it this one? No. Maybe this one, maybe this one, right? You keep trying different things. That's what's happening in that first thing. But then you finally find it, you keep searching. Still not, I kind of get angry because you can't find it. Right? But eventually, oh, now we find it. Now you found it, right? Now you're at peace finally. Okay, I found it, now I can calm down. That's how I see this. So can you convey that sense of arrival and, no, just from here. Just from here. Okay, one small thing, very good. One small thing, the rhythm here, it's not, those are not grace notes, but they are actual 16ths. So the rhythm here is like this. Okay, let's talk about something. Can you show me what fingers you use for? Is it A? Okay, so it is 4 that you use on the second note. 5? Ooh, why would you do that? Because when you play, it sounds like this. You know, instead of. Do you remember the 2-note slur? Can you do this? And then add the B. That's it. Okay. F sharp. So faster. F sharp. There you go. And now with the left hand. Do you remember the balance we had between hands at the beginning of the movement? Can you try that? Okay, it's tricky to start there, I know. But do you get what I'm trying to have you do? So, and then when you have this, surprise. That needs to be much louder than everything else, so that then you have the contrast. You see? Very good, very good. Just again, a reminder of the 2-note slur. They are more prominent than you can imagine throughout the piece and throughout anything that you would play by Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, Clementi. And we want to convey that. So you play this a little bit like this. Right? Versus, well, yes, a lot on the first one, and then dip, and then float. Less. Can you try that? That's it. But can you play more? Do you have siblings? You don't have siblings, so you have nobody to yell at. That's why there is no rage in you. You need some rage here. Go for it. Yeah, because remember we talked about it's an opera, right? Characters play a role. Every day we run into people that are nice, right? People who are rude, people who are dismissive, people who are very kind, supportive, and so on, good and bad, right? And we all have all of those elements, some of those within ourselves too. But in an opera plot like that, there will always be the naughty person and there will always be the kind person. And this is, I think, the naughty person that we want to convey. Does that make sense? So now I will ask you to play from the beginning. I want to see if we can get through the exposition. And I want you to be more dramatic in everything you do. Storm. Not longer, not longer. Be nice. Not so fast, not so fast. Yes, and these, the upper note, sorry to stop, because you are doing such a great job. But I think this is an important detail. So you are playing these as grace notes, but these are written. Do you hear the difference? So the upper note is with the left hand moving voice. Let's go again. And more. Very nice, very nice. One last thing, this closing theme here, I see that your teacher already circled those notes, right? It's a tricky thing to do, I know. But everybody who's in the audience should be aware. When we hear, actually what's written is this. We have 3 moving voices, of which 2 go in thirds, and then the upper one. Can you try to play like that? So you have to hold every note, connect it to the next one. Let's try the right hand alone first. Our hand is very much against playing the piano well. That's how it is. Our anatomy of our hands is so different from what we would need to play the piano effortlessly, because we have 2 short fingers, 3 long fingers, weaker part here where we mostly need to voice things like now, and this is heavy, which we need to keep soft, so everything's upside down. But there are certain elements of our physiology that we can use to our advantage. And I think you can do a little better at that. So you know when you start and it goes, and you are having a hard time keeping this soft and playing more here. If you can simply depress the keys down here slower, and then use your wrist and to put your arm weight in the top, try the first one and see how it. So you are going to do like that. So you just repeat that, sir. Good. That's it. And now with the left hand. Left hand matches your lower voice in the right hand. Ah. That's it. That's it. That's it. You see? So then I know it's hard to do on the spot, but you already kind of did it. And if you take that to the practice room, it's going to be great, right? And then it has to be even more dramatic when it goes to. But it's the same concept. You just lean into those 16th notes with your arm. Try. No, not. But. So again, light, and then ta ta ta. That's it. More. That's it. That's it. And again, it's not easy to do on the spot, but I think you can do it. Obviously, you are showing, right? He's showing us that he can do it. So you take it to the practice room and you'll apply it, and it's going to be great. It's already good, but I think it can be great. And to make it great, you want to take into consideration all these different character shifts. Think about an opera. I would actually recommend coming up with a story that goes, a storyline that goes with the entire movement. And just to kind of create a plot with characters and with happenings that you can imagine while you play. Sometimes that kind of imagery helps us be more expressive in our performance, okay? Good job, a pleasure. great job, Will. This is such a special piece to me, and I know a handful of people who think this is a tiny little masterpiece of the Romantic era. And I have a feeling you agree with that based on how you play it. I appreciate your sensitivity and how expressive you are. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that very thing, about expressivity. When we play a romantic piece, we all know, especially if it's Chopin, Brahms, even Grieg, that it needs to showcase a certain degree of rubato and flexibility. Therefore, namely, that there is room for playing around with the timing of the phrase, right? And that is very accurate. And that sometimes we translate into, I can do whatever I want. The problem with that is that then it loses the flow. There is a thread there that needs to be in place in order for that rubato to be convincing. And for someone like you who is so sensitive, it's clear to me that you're a very sensitive person. Is that fair? Yes. Yeah. And you probably feel very deeply about anything that you encounter in your daily life. And that comes through in your music. But here is the problem. If I am going to speak with affect like this for every word, as if this keyboard lid is the most important thing in the world, right? Because I happen to talk about it. By the time I get to tell you, hey, I discovered this really cool piece, like half an hour into me emphasizing how amazing this part of the lid is, that it swivels up and down. And then I, because I was able to put this down, yeah, right, half an hour later, I also am telling you, and I found this. By the time I get to this, it doesn't mean as much. And you're probably so tired of me. Do you agree with that? Do you all agree with that? So it is a little bit that you do that, and we are all faulty of it, including myself. Sometimes we just think, but this, what can be more special than this note, right? And then I'm emphasizing that, and then this, and then right? Is this ugly? No. Is it exhausting? Yes. Yes. Because if I do this, so what did I do? I moved it a little bit. I kept it pretty straight, and I saved that special timing request for, not for that, for this. I think that's the special thing here. So then, right? I'm going to take time there, showcase that, that's special. And then it is special. But if I, as we say, milk every single syllable of everything I do, then it's not as special. Can we try that? So, first of all, what's the meter here? Do you remember? it makes sense that you don't remember because it sounded like you didn't. It's 9/8. In other words, how do we think, how many larger beats in a bar? If it's 9/8, we usually group them in three, in groups of three. So it's going to be three large in a bar. So we want to hear 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Even if it's, you can play a little under this tempo that I started. But we want to have three in a bar. Okay, so now we are going to do that again, and we are going to work on, I'm very particular about what I'm going to ask you to do. The dynamic level at the beginning is the piano. Just like the Mozart sonata. It says piano at the beginning. But that doesn't mean that every note is the same, right? I think this, we need a little more. And I would use 2 fingers like this. And then with my elbow going up, put all the weight. That's not all your weight, arm weight. More. There. Can I do this? Here. And then you go to your knee. There you go. And then this one is fine. But we want a line there. Okay, can you do the left hand? If you can play more legato, that would be even better. So hold, and then substitute. Good. You are working too hard, in my opinion, to project with that line, and that's because you are doing every single effort just from the finger, instead of just dropping your arm in. You're going to use your arm weight in those and not in this. That's it. Good. And now? Okay, now let's talk about this right here. As I said, this is weak. This is too heavy. So when you play, it sounds a bit... Not only that, but there is also another thing about our instrument, which is the low notes are on this side. The high notes are on this side, right? We usually have a melody more often than not here in this register. The higher we go in register, the weaker the notes sound to us. I don't know if you noticed in yesterday's concert by Mr. Babayan that any time that he played up here that he wanted to project something, that was way louder than everything else. There is a reason for that, because dogs usually, if those of you who have dogs may know this, but they can hear pitches way above what we can hear as humans. And that has to do with just the nature of our hearing system. That's because every note comes with a series of 16 overtones. Have you learned about those? If you, students in the room, if you don't know about overtones, write down overtones and look them up, because it's important to know. That's why this sounds rich. You know, when we play, that sounds whole. This even more. Because we hear a series of 16 overtones above that pitch. And the higher we go in register, the fewer of those 16 pitches we are going to perceive as humans. Because of that, we need to project even more. So it's not just the physical shortcoming of our hand, but also the shortcoming of the instrument. So we need to overcome, it's a double challenge, right? That's why this needs to be double less, and this needs to be double more. And that gives you room to descend into I would again use 2 fingers. Can you do that? And connect. Don't let go of the lower A until, because that will help it project more. Okay. Can I show you? I am doing this. Good, and do it again, even from here. Your entire back goes into those fingers. But hold on to this. And then this. I think you can do more with that. Can you sit back? Because I think you're trying to do it too much with your head, and all you need is this. Allow your arm to sit on my hand. You're suspending it. Let it go. Let it hang. Yeah, let it go, let it go, let it go. Let it go. You're still not. There. Do you feel that weight? Yeah. That's what you want in that pinky. Can you do that? Ah, that's it. Thank you. So now, let's do the whole thing. Careful, I think you might have learned this incorrectly. First time here. After that, keep going. No, this is. So twice you have this, right? Yes. And then the third time, this one goes up. B, C. With the you see this? B, C, G sharp. Yes. The rest is fine. Do you see the difference? Because I think you're playing instead of. So just make sure that you fix those notes. So the first. But then it's the only time that it goes that way. Yeah, let's go from there. Can you keep in mind that it's, again, 3 in a bar so that we have... Go on. Yeah, that's it. So let me talk to you briefly about something related to voicing here. One thing, and not just voicing, timing too. One thing is that I would recommend practicing the left hand alone. Often when we are a little insecure or timing doesn't line up perfectly, in my experience, it's 80% of the time, it's the left hand. Where the character comes from too, because when we play, you see, that's what creates the mood. And I would practice that left hand to have it very stable and very much in time, with the right character, with that tone, but in time, because then you can do a little bit of something with the right hand. But if you do it with both of them, then it falls apart, right? So you want this to be and then you can lean into this. Right? You can take a little bit of time there, but the left hand ideally would be more stable, and that will provide you with the opportunity to take more liberties in the right hand, in the melody. But that is not an easy thing to do. Can you play the left hand alone, if I asked you? From somewhere? I was playing from here, but you can. Okay, so I'm not going to put you on the spot with that, but that proves my point, because the left hand is the first one to be insecure in our playing, all of us, not just you. Right? And it's easy to remember, and it's clear that that's what we should project with, right? But the left hand is the other part that we need to be more secure in. Now, in addition to that, here is what happens. That's tricky. That's really hard to do. And that's why I think playing more legato than it's written is going to help the case for voicing. Sometimes when we want to voice something, it's enough to just hold the notes and connect them in that particular voice, versus not in the other, and then they will sound differently, therefore they will be voiced, right? If you play all the same, you see, then they all sound the same. There is no difference. But if I play, can you try that? Well, I wouldn't start with 5, because then you don't have a finger for C, right? Well, I guess it's exactly the spot that let me help you. Let me help you. You worry about this, and I'm going to help you with these fingers. Okay, let's go. Oh. What was different? What did I make you do, or not allowed you to do, or however you want to put it? Could you tell? More weight, and I didn't let your finger go up away from the key. I held your finger on the key for the duration of its, right, written length. So now can you do that alone? Again, can you, maybe I would sit back, that doesn't help. And this, can this be less? It's getting there, but it takes a lot of work, right? Okay. I would also like to talk a little bit about the middle section. Technically, among the hardest things, I mean, this is very hard to do technically. To voice that way, it's not an easy thing, and that's technique too. But this, in my opinion, to achieve clarity there is quite tricky, right? So I want to talk about that because I missed, I don't know how you, can you play that? Go on. Okay, I think I see what's happening. So it's hard because it's double notes. Can you play like I did? Do a little arm rotation on every single one. Good. So one thing is that you are for some reason you're detaching all of them. So that makes it harder. We can detach. I can get behind playing this, and then so detaching that. But then I think that those need to go together. Yes. Exactly. Now, I would recommend this wrist rotation. So you see, when we go towards the thumb, we are going to go above and down into the thumb. When we go towards the pinky, we go down and up into the pinky. And in this particular motif, we have both motions together, so that forms a full wrist rotation. So you start in a neutral place with the wrist, but your elbow needs to come up a little bit. It can't be under the keys. There you go. And then you're going to go over, and then under, and then up. And so, can you do that? That's it. Now can you do it in tempo? Thank you. Where were those fingers before? Can you play hands together now? New color. And huge crescendo. Slow down. Rest, rest, rest. Thank you. That's it. Don't forget to release the pedal there for the rest. But this sounded so much stronger now, right? So remember, work on your meter. Keep things in time as much as possible, and then choose very wisely where you're going to take more time, right? Not everywhere. And we need to have a good sense of pulse. And then, of course, think about what do I need to hear. And regardless of whether it's pianissimo or fortissimo, there is something that we need to hear, right? And that something needs to project above everything else. Okay? Good job. Good job, Connor. You play this very well, and you have all the right, in my opinion, the right ideas for the inflections and for timing and all of that. And you obviously worked so hard to bring out the melody at the top, and you're doing that beautifully. I think there are a couple of things that could make this a little stronger in a public setting. And the first thing that I will mention is the structure of the piece. And that includes, actually, for anything that we all play, that includes the form of the piece, whether it's a sonata form like the Mozart, whether it's a ternary form, ABA kind of form like the Grieg Nocturne, or another ternary form that this etude may be, right, or binary, or whatever the form is. That's part of that, in understanding the structure. But what's even more important than that, in my opinion, is to understand the structure of the flow of the music, meaning, and the hierarchy of everything. Meaning, what's the loudest dynamic in the piece? What's the biggest moment of the piece? Fortissimo. Right here. Can you play that? That's your fortissimo? Can you go from before with the crescendo, maybe? And big crescendo. And big. Okay, so we can argue about whether that was enough or not. But the point is that we need to have it very clear in our head when we perform this, that's the highest point of the piece. Just like in the Grieg Nocturne, the biggest point is on that, third page, right? Yeah, you need to keep that in mind because you build everything from the beginning up to that point to that moment, right? Okay, what's right under that? So this is the biggest, the culminating point of the piece. What's under that? There are a couple of places, right, that are marked forte. This is one. Can you play? Let me come here, and it's going to be easier. Is that tricky to start there? That's fine, you don't have to. I mean, here, is that better?
Wait, so that's, I'm trying to focus
that's it. And this one. Okay, so good. So that's a forte, right? And we actually have that here.
Yeah.
Can you play that? Give me from here, F and B flat. Forte. There we go. Good. So what you want to keep in mind, you have the big moment that we started with in this conversation, right? Then under that you have these other moments. And every time you're in this place, one of these places, you need to keep in mind this is not the climax, right? So to kind of hold it back. Then, what is the softest dynamic level? What's the lightest, softest?
The very lightest is a triple piano.
Yes, where?
It's
at the very end, at the very, very end. So nothing should be as soft as that, right? can you play these arpeggios again? But one other thing, since we are doing that, playing softly doesn't mean playing slowly. So don't get so slow there. Yeah, why do you slow down? I wouldn't. I would not slow down. Can you play straight all the way to this chord? Can you do that?
Just here or studying?
The whole thing,
Okay.
and no slowing down all the way to this chord, because then you have room here to do more. Okay? What? Not slow, not slow. Dum plum, in tempo. Dum plum. And now, slow. More left hand, more. Ta, ta, ti, da, di. This is slow. You see? If you do the other one slow, then this one doesn't have the intended effect. This needs to go like a comet. And then, no, nobody's rushing you here. You can take all the time in the world you want. But if you take too much before that, then that one doesn't work anymore. Okay? So, I wanted to start a conversation there because it's very easy to lose track of where we are within a piece, especially when we play a Chopin etude. I mean, one of the hardest things to play, really, regardless of which one it is. Some people think that some are harder, some are easier. It might be true to a certain degree, but they are all so hard to play well. And it's very easy to lose track of where we are, what we are building toward, and while we play these difficult passages, right? So, that is the first thing. Second thing, a very simple tip that it's not really a tip, it's a warning. When we start a piece, how many of us in the room are currently playing a piece or have played a piece where one hand starts and the other hand joins either a beat later, a bar later, whenever? I'm one, you raise your hand. Okay, most of us, yes? A piece of advice is have the other hand ready to go on the key. Don't hold your left hand on your lap and go at it. You might miss it. You might not get the right intensity, tone, right? So especially this, because it's just. See, I would have my. Can you do that? Just this much that I played. Okay. Okay, now listen to me. Can you reproduce that tone? It's not. You're playing this. Really? You're playing like this. You're playing. And I'm playing more. So, number one, pedal down. Is it down before you play the first note?
Sometimes I do it after the notes.
Let's make it every single time for the rest of your life. Down, then play. Okay? Okay, where was your left hand? Where was your left hand? Can you give me forte? Forget about it, piano. Do you mind if I do this for you? So allow me to hold your arms. There. That's the weight you want in your notes. So now you're gonna play that E flat there and that A flat there, but I'm gonna bring your arms there. And aside from the fact that you're gonna aim to hit those particular keys, you're gonna use this weight, okay? Ta, ta. Again. Wait, wait, wait. Again, I'll tell you when. So first I'm singing it, then you play it. Ta, ta. And again. Now you do it without me. Drop your arms there. Is the first note supposed to be louder or the second? What do you think? The first E flat or the second one?
The second?
The second one. So give me that, because you played the opposite. But it doesn't mean the first one is soft. You see? Can you do that? There you go. That's better. Okay? Also, don't use pinky at all. Sure, for the second, you have to. Although I wouldn't. Honestly, I would use 4. Is your hand big enough to do?
I used to do like that, and then to the F, I would use 5.
5, exactly. That's why I would start with 4. Also, I'm getting a better, but regardless of what you use on the downbeat, I would not use the pinky on the upbeat. So on the first one, I would use anything else. And in the left hand, definitely 3. What was that? Can you give me more sound, please?
Okay.
More sound. There's not more sound. I'm gonna give you more sound. There you go. Do you have siblings? You don't have. All of you I have a sister. We used to fight so much, we would get like that. And when I teach some students like you, I kind of can tell you don't have siblings because you don't have rage in you. Siblings bring that rage out of you. And it continues into adulthood, believe it or not, sometimes. But it's wonderful to have. You need to imagine that you have a sibling, a cousin, someone who drives you nuts all day, nagging at you. And then you go, give me that passion. Hands here, arms. There you go. Okay, and then. Let's play more now.
Okay, so have more volume then?
So I'm going to talk about that in a second, because that's the next thing. I told you I appreciate how much work you put into bringing out the top. And that is essential. But that's not the only thing happening in this piece. There is the bass line that I rarely hear in your playing, that also forms a counter melody together with the melody. And then what's happening in the middle, really, sure, needs to be softer. But there are times when we need to grow, right? The long notes in the melody, especially up there, are not going to grow for us. That's why those little notes in the middle are there. They are the ones that help us grow or decrease intensity, right? So we can do. What did I do?
So you kind of increase the intensity in the in the notes, like with the
Yeah. Did I fool anybody that the long notes were doing a crescendo, maybe? That's the goal. If I didn't, I need to practice more. But that's the goal. When you play. Right? Can you try that? Why don't you give me that bass is so beautiful. Why don't you give it to me? so beautiful. I want to hear that. Do you know where that is? I have a feeling you do, right? Let's take it again from the beginning, and maybe I'll put this here and point at things as you play along. Okay, I want to also challenge you a little bit. This piece is in common time, 4/4, right? I hear that very well from you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. I want to challenge you to think in 2 in a bar, so that it's more like this. 1, 2. Can you try? Can you do that? So that means I have my hair is going away, but I still have some. So just a hair that like mine faster. Okay? But in 2 instead of pa pa pa, we want pa 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 dee. Too slow. You're already too slow. By the way, that's another. You kind of ease into it like the train leaves the station. There are pieces where we do that. This is not one of them. This needs to go. You can linger on this. I don't care if you put a fermata on the first note, but then. Not as square, but I wouldn't start. I don't know if you're aware. Are you aware? Are you doing that intentionally? Because you're doing. I would suggest going more into it from the first beat. And we want 2 in a bar, so. Bass. Actually from the beginning again, can you focus more on the bass? Imagine that the melody is in the bass now, especially as you get here, from here on, these 4 bars. This is fine, but these 4 bars, okay? Let's go, let's go. And now left hand. Look at your hands. Ta, ta, ta. Bass. Yes, because you're not looking at your hands. You're too distracted by me, and I apologize for that. But you sound like $1,000,000 now, doesn't he? All of a sudden, you sound like $1,000,000. Before it was $500,000. Now it's $1,000,000. Go from here. Remember the bass. Remember the bass. And every so often, when you do see this hairpin, the crescendo, that's where you want to activate your fingers that play the middle voice, those small notes, a little more. So then from this, you go to this, just for the crescendo, and then immediately come back. Okay. No, bass. Too soon. That's it. Da, da, da. Yeah, we need all the voices here. Do you know what the... Thank you. Can you bring that out more? The bar before. Again. Go. And more. Use more arm. Go, 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 go. Ta, 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 da, ta, 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 and now outburst. All, everything. Don't slow down. Now take time for this note. Oh my God. You can do that? You can do that? Why did you not do it before? Now tempo. Softer, softer, softer. 4, 1, 2. Too low, too soft. This is where you want. So after. And then you go. So you want to, because you're a little mousy here.
So is that like maybe here or here?
Do this, the last bit. Soft. Too slow. It's not in tempo. Tarari or tarari or tarari. And now, take your time. But I would, this trill, you can put a fermata on it. The reason I want it louder is because you want to have room to do a decrescendo into the resolution on the last arpeggio, right? If you play too softly, there is no room to play softer on the resolution. Make sense? So if you play like, what are you going to do with that, right? So what you want to do is to start, you should imagine it's forte, start slower, speed it up, slow it down. You see? Can you do that? Yes, and you see how if you keep things in time right before that, this will work better. I want to hear your last page again, and you are going to take that beautiful time and tone just for that page, for that note. But I mean, when I say last page, of course, I mean, you know what I mean. Why loud? Why loud? Everything was so good, and then you just, why? I have to insist on this again. This. And everything soft, including the chord. So let's, what do you think of that? Good? Yeah. Bravo. Good job. What a pleasure to work with the three of you today, and just to see how you responded and how what we were able to get out of these pieces. Of course, there is so much more to work on beyond what we just did, but I hope this was a little helpful. Okay, this is a time for us to have a nice conversation about music, about really anything related to what we do here this week. Based on the notes, let's start with the students. Based on the notes you took during the class, do you have any thoughts? Do you have any questions that you would like to share?
I had a question about your pedaling advice for Connor's etude.
Yes?
You told him at the beginning, you said from now on for the rest of your life, keep your foot down before you play.
Yes.
But would you not want to play the note first, and so then you have that like free falling sound with the arm weight, and then use the pedal afterwards to accentuate the sound instead of relying on the pedal to bring out the sound for you?
I love your question. Did you all hear what he asked? Or should I repeat that? Should I repeat the question? Okay. He asked about my advice on pedaling that I had for Connor at the beginning of the etude when I said, for the rest of your life, pedal down, then you play. And he's asking me if there could be a counter-argument about placing the note, right? And then putting the pedal down. So here's what's happening. Inside the piano, and on Thursday, our piano technician extraordinaire will show you a little bit of what's inside the piano. So you'll get to see this and understand a little better. I don't really fully understand 100% either. But there are certain parts of the mechanics of the piano that I do understand and that we do have to understand when we play in order to play well and to achieve the expression that we want, right? Some of you, I remember at least 2 of my lessons yesterday. Those of you who played for me, we talked about sound production in soft dynamics. Do you remember that? Where we feel the weight of the key, the weight of the hammer, and then we depress the key from being inside the key already, slowly, right? It's the same, it's also part of that. When we depress the right pedal, right, the damper pedal, it's called the damper pedal because all those dampers that are sitting on the strings, precluding the strings from vibrating, go up when we press the damper pedal. If we place this note and then press the pedal, when we depress the note, the key, the strings for that note, for as long as we hold it down, will vibrate. When we put we depress the pedal afterwards, perhaps the other strings will respond to a certain extent. But if all the hammers, all the dampers are up from the beginning, it allows for all the strings across the instrument to vibrate sympathetically, regardless of what note we play. Whether I play this first, oh sorry, wrong pedal. The reason it sounds so rich, it's because of that. If I do, it's not gonna sound as rich. And that's the reason for it. When I start a piece like that, although it's not so loud, but especially if we have a loud opening, perhaps you all know the opening of the Pathetic Sonata, right? That's a very good example where I want, for sure, pedal down and then I want that chord. It sounds differently when all the dampers are up and all the strings inside the piano vibrate together with those notes that we are playing. That's the reason for that. It's much richer. Yes?
Dr. Negruțiu, you had mentioned to Connor also that when he began the etude, rather than like slowly easing into it, he started in tempo right away. And you mentioned that there's some pieces that are different from that. So, in your opinion, is there any way, like any definitive way to know when to into it and when to just start it more in tempo?
That's a beautiful question. He asked about my advice also for Connor to not ease into the tempo of the etude, but to start in tempo after the first note. And then he asked, but that I said that there are pieces where we do that, where we ease into the tempo. And he asked, how do we know, how can we know what piece deserves that approach versus the other, right? And that's, again, a brilliant question. I don't know that I have a clear answer to that. I think it depends on the nature of the piece, on the style, and on what is in the score. But that needs to be judged by us as the interpreters in an organic and congruent way. And in order for us to do that, this brings me to the concept of what I call musicianship capital, which is what we all need to build. What does that mean? The more music we listen to, the more we read, the more we do anything toward understanding music, the more we understand the difference between Chopin and Grieg even, but definitely Chopin and Liszt, Chopin and Mozart and Bach, the more we understand with our ears how things are supposed to sound, the more we can tell when we start something. And for instance, if we were to look at the pieces from today, right? The Mozart sonata, should it go? It shouldn't. How do we know that? You just know. It doesn't sound like Mozart. It shouldn't be like that ever, right? So that's how you know, because you know. Then, can this be a little bit like that? Can it be more flexible like that to ease into it? Absolutely, it can be. Why? It's a slow piece. It has all of those syncopations. It's a romantic piece. And when you start and do that, you experiment, then you know that it can work like that. Then this. Can it work like this? Practiced it in a while, but can it work like that? Maybe if it's done in a certain way. Here is a very specific answer to Connor, and I hope you don't mind. I mean, you were just here, you can't mind. Connor was not steady with his tempo. That's why I advised you to think 2 in a bar instead of 4, so that there is a better flow, and that will lead to you not slowing down. Because you were a little too sleepy. You're too young to drink coffee, but you sounded like an adult who hasn't had their coffee in the morning, like me. I didn't have enough coffee this morning, and if I sit down, I might play. No breakfast, no coffee, right? And then I had to snap you out of that, in a way, and that included starting, in tempo after the first note. But you can experiment, and there can be degrees of that because it's a Chopin piece. For instance, if you sit down, if you learn all the etudes opus 25, 12 of them, right? And you sit down to play a recital of those 12 etudes, then you start this very differently than if you just play the one etude. Because then it's part of the whole. Then you need to keep in mind that you can probably, if I played all 12 etudes, while I played this opening of the first etude, I would keep in mind how I'm going to play the last one in the group. And I'm going to keep in mind how, I'm going to conceive the whole as a unit and how the first etude serves the whole. It's a very different concept. That's how, you know, you put things in context. But the first thing is we need to know enough about music in order to make those determinations. And that's why we all benefit from instruction from someone throughout our lives. I know you might think, now I'm a student, and then at some point I'll be Dr. Osowski, Dr. Fincher, Dr. Wachter, Dr. Negruțiu, and I won't need instruction. We also need feedback from it. We help each other sometimes, you know, because it's hard to know when you're on the spot. But this brings me to another concept that I want to share with all of you. Is something that I do in my own practicing, which is, I call that flipped expressive practicing. What does that mean? If something is soft, I'm going to play it loudly. If something is legato, I'll play it staccato. If it's staccato, I'll play it legato, and so on and so forth. And with something like this related to your question, I would try it in all possible ways to inform my decision. Because maybe I don't know. We don't always know. So for instance, I might do and turn it into something completely different. Because after trying so many, like we did, and you kept not playing more, and I kept asking, play more, play more, play more. I should have asked you, play fortissimo staccato, and then go back to then I hear it very differently, right? Because I cleanse my ear with something ridiculous. Or waltz, right? And then when I go back to right? Also, what did I do expressively? I pushed forward and then I held back on for this descent. But let's try the opposite, which is kind of what you were doing. That versus which one makes more sense? The second one, how do we know that? Can you explain it? Anybody? There, you can. I mean, I think we can. What happens? Everything up to that point builds up to everything I do in the left hand, right hand, everything builds up to that, and then there is like a sigh. So that deserves a little bit of time, especially when it's right. That's how you know. You try it different ways. You don't always just know. Music is and performing is part science, part I don't know. There are certain things we can't explain. That's what's beautiful about art in general. Once you have the science part solid, it's all about what comes above that. And that's what makes a great artist versus someone who's not inclined to do that, right? Because certain things, once the foundation is there, you can't possibly do the wrong thing because you know, like I said, you don't start the Mozart sonata and ease into the tempo. You just know that at some point. But that doesn't mean that you can't play around with the sound, with all sorts of other things to make it your own. And those are the things that cannot be explained, or the timing. That's the hardest thing to teach or to explain. You just have to eventually feel it. Like faith, like you trust it's there and you don't know why, and it's okay that it can't be explained sometimes. You know? Other thoughts? Yes?
When, in the first piece you mentioned that you like to come up with type stories to go along with your pieces. Is there like any specific type of genre of story that you like to stick with over all your pieces, or does it come with different types of pieces?
The question has to do with my my advice for Alex to come up with a storyline that goes with the Mozart sonata, and whether I like a certain genre of story. Did I understand that correctly? For across composers perhaps, or different kinds of storylines, right? Honestly, when I teach, and some of my students that heard me give them that advice know, I tell the student, I don't care what the story is. You can come up with the most ridiculous story, and you don't even have to tell me what it is. Because as soon as you come back and you have a story that's running through your head while you're playing, I can tell that you are thinking of that. In fact, the more ridiculous the story, the better we are going to play, and the more personal the story. That's why it's okay if you don't share it with your teacher, because maybe it's something so personal you don't feel comfortable doing that. But what matters is that it's dramatic. That's what matters. You know, a lot of different kinds of emoting that should go into it. And then that's all that matters really. Because whether it's this story or another story, I'm trying to remember what I came up with. Oh, I came up with the maze of navigating our hallways today, right? That's just something that came to mind. I can come up with something completely different. But it's ultimately, I think we can all agree, right, that this is a searching thing. I haven't found it. I'm trying again. Still haven't found it, right? And then so on. But beyond that, it can be anything. So the answer, short answer, this was a long answer, but short answer is no, I don't have any preference about. You come up with your own, and don't tell your mother. Other thoughts? Can't see. Yes, two there. So you and then behind you. I am very sorry, but I did not understand, I think, the key words that you were trying to say. Fingering. What is the question about fingering? Yes. Yes. Excellent question. So her question is, because I talked about fingering and changing the fingering to something else, some scores don't mention fingerings. How do we know what fingering to choose? That's a smart fingering. Well, there are certain, we can be here until the end of the week talking about this, but there are certain concepts that go with it. And it all has to do with the intersection of our anatomy and the music. Yeah, so we have the music, and then we have our anatomy, which is how our hands are, our physiology rather, how our hands are built. We have 2 short fingers. We have 3 long fingers. Out of the short fingers, one of the short fingers is the loudest and the heaviest. It's also the opposing finger that doesn't function the same way as the other 4. So this is the most problematic of all. Then we have the weakest finger as one of the short ones that we need to supplement with arm weight when we want to project with it. And the fingers in the middle that are longer are more able to produce a warm tone. But these 2 are connected here. So that creates another set of problems. That's why we practice Hanon, by the way. Hanon is the best possible book that I recommend everybody buys and uses every day. I still practice Hanon exercises because it helps develop those fingers. But what fingers do we choose? It depends on what the phrase is. For instance, as long as we can, and it's possible, if it's the last note of a beautiful phrase that ends softly, we should avoid using the thumb on it because it's the loudest, heaviest, and hardest to control in soft. Similarly, if we do a crescendo towards something, ideally we will avoid using the pinky as the last note of that. Does that make sense? Is that logical? So it's something like that. Also, if we want a melodic note, and I count this as a melodic note, I'm going to avoid using the pinky because it doesn't have enough weight. It doesn't have enough strength and weight to support my arm weight. So I'm going to use 3 or 4, sometimes even 2 fingers together. And then all the variations around those concepts related to fingering. But it has to somehow, this imperfection we have here needs to meet the musical demands of the phrase that we are trying to choose fingering for. You know, that's in a nutshell my response to that. There was a question, Frederica? Oh, okay. Who? Someone here? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. Earlier you were talking about voicing and how you do voicing just by doing legato with the other.
Yes.
Are there techniques that you use often for voicing that you didn't talk about?
Yes, there are. He asked about voicing because I mentioned, and I'll rephrase what you said. When I mentioned that you can voice something not just by volume, but also by articulation. You know, using a different articulation in a voice than the other voice also helps to create better voicing in that voice that we play legato, for instance. And he asked if there are other techniques of practicing voicing that I did not mention. And yes, there are. For instance, that was in Mozart when we were talking about, right? But I will use a random example. I'm making something up. So let's say we have to voice chords. Let's say we have these chords. And I'm already voicing the top because that's what I decided to do and I just did. But let's say that I'm practicing that and I'm having a hard time with the lower notes, right? And it's sounding more like this. And I'm sure you don't want to sit there and listen to me play that, right? So the way I am going to practice is in all sorts of different ways. One is first I'm going to practice one finger at a time. So my thumb, again, the loudest, heaviest, needs to be the softest. That's our luck as pianists. So then I'm going to practice how to produce that tone. And I'm going to learn by trial and error that the best way to do that is to sit inside the key, feel the key weight, and from there go down slowly. And I'm gonna learn that it's not straight down, but a little forward, outward, either way, but not straight down, to get that soft, soft sound. I'm also gonna learn that if I allow my arm to sit on it, it's gonna be too loud. So I need to kind of suspend my arm there. Okay, the second, it's the exact same thing. I'm also gonna learn that if my finger is loose, either it's not gonna sound, or it's not going to be together. That will lead me to understand eventually that the softer I want to play, the more control I need, the stronger my fingers, my bridge, my everything have to be, right? And then I want to voice this more. So I'm going to practice in 2 ways. First, the lower 2 voices soft, hold them, and then play this fortissimo. Do you understand what I did? I can also do because what I want to study for myself is what it feels like to play the louder note that I want versus the softer. And then I want to find a way to mix both together. And then I'm going to do the opposite. The note that I want, drop my arm into it, and then go up into the notes that I want soft. Until I feel it and until I can try. And then that's how I practice voicing when I need to practice that. So a combination of I'm going to use different articulations. I'm going to exaggerate, play fortissimo in the voice that I want to voice. I'm going to also do the opposite. Because ultimately we need to be able to do it in any way that it would come up in the music, you know. Any other questions? Yes, Connor.
So you're saying like with the voicing, like that, like instead of like using your arm weight, use less arm weight for the notes you don't want to like project more. So I thought, and my piano teacher told me says that to like play it like softly, I need to like use my arm weight so that I can like control the sound more. So what is your take on that?
His question is still about voicing, and basically, if I understand correctly, you're asking how to use arm weight for it. What I just showed here, I guess I maybe didn't mention it, but my arm, I was channeling my arm weight towards the note that I want voiced more. And I was using most of my arm weight for that while using very little to none for the other voices. That's the makeup of that when you want to voice a chord. So indeed you need arm weight because that's what's going to help. That's one of the ingredients to voice a chord. Arm weight, but the other one is also like if I want to voice that chord, I'm going to make my finger of steel basically and very pointy into that note versus those. So then my arm will go towards that. Does that answer your question? Yes, we have one more question, time for one more.
So one thing I noticed that you told, I'm not sure if you told every one of them, but I definitely noticed that you mentioned it a lot, was that to keep your elbow more like up above the keyboard, and I believe you mentioned that to me in my lesson
Yes.
as well. And so does that go for all the time when you're playing? Should your elbow always be up, or are there times when it can be down? And if so, when would that be?
Yes, great question. I told some students, including him in a lesson, that the elbow should go up. And he's asking, is that a general thing? Should the elbow always be higher like that? Or is it just for specific scenarios? And the answer is it's just for specific scenarios. There is no part of our arms and hands, no part of this, the mechanics of this, that should always be in one position. Everything should be fluid, and the reason I talked about lifting your elbow is because we needed more arm weight into your whichever finger, right? And it was the same today. And in order to produce that, if I want more weight here in my second finger on this E flat, if my elbow is down, then I'm only using this part of my forearm. But if I do this, I'm using the entire weight of my arm into it. That's the only reason to do this. Nobody should play like this. That would be ridiculous, right? But there are times when you want to do that in order to produce the tone that you want, so that you can use the entire arm weight into that note. Okay, I know that it's time for lunch. Everybody's hungry. Thank you for putting up with me for 2 hours. Congratulations to the performers. Enjoy lunch, and we'll see you later. Thank you so much. I am very